Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 305 of the Orange Pill Investor. And today I want to talk about how I knew enough was enough and that I could, or, yeah, oh, Jesus. Maybe now it's the Orange Pill Investor. Maybe I should talk into the fucking microphone. No takebacks, no do overs. It's recorded, it's on the blockchain for all of eternity. All right, so episode 305. And today I want to talk about how I uh, I made the decision that I could retire and just make money off of my stack, selling covered calls. But let me try to make sure that I don't have technical difficulties. I'm going to try to get into this chat and see if anybody is here. I thought my extra monitors were going to arrive yesterday, and then when I created the account and checked my tracking, I found out that no, they're not going to come till like the 16th or something. So that was pretty freaking annoying. What's up, David? What's up, Howard? Thank you for confirming I am not just talking into the void. That is much appreciated. So let me get my ish together. And now that I got that settled, I will yap, and then I'll come back to the chats. So my boy from high school sent me a message. He's going to go by, let's just call him Scuba Steve. And he sent me a message saying, hey, is this guy talking about you? And he sent me the link, and I went and checked, and I was like, yeah, I think probably so. And so 88 Sats Radio was talking about, hey, maybe don't get too overhyped and think, oh, I want to do what these other people are doing. It might not be the right time for you yet. And it's an excellent video, and definitely good information in here. So I thought it would be appropriate, and of course I'll link this video in the comments on X. But I thought it would be appropriate to go over the decision making criteria that I used. Of course, it's not financial advice. Quitting my W 2 job was not without anxiety and not without a family discussion, of course. My youngest is a senior in college, so there's insurance issues about whether, we're going to have to go buy our own insurance now. And I think there might even be requirements that he has to be insured the whole time he's in school. Anyway, there's a lot of rigmarole to it, and it wasn't a decision that I entered into lightly, even though every time I saw the price of MicroStrategy go up $50 a share, I'm like, now? Is it time now? What about now? Can I do it now? And my plan was to probably just ride out some portion of 2025. We get our bonuses in like March, April. So I thought, oh, if I can at least just stick it out till April to get my last bonus, and then I'll just quit immediately as soon as that bonus hits the direct deposit. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it anymore. And it's only been a week, not even a week, but I'm happy with it so far. We'll see. But I didn't just assume that I can do it with number, because number's going to go up forever. And the way that I basically went about it was, given what my imaginary worst case scenario is for MicroStrategy's price, would I still be able to collect enough premiums off of option selling to support basic subsistence level, right? You know what I mean? Like, I got to pay the mortgage, I have to eat. I don't necessarily have to have a fancy car. Uh, I don't even necessarily have to pay my credit card bills because those are those are not directly tied to my account getting liquidated. I absolutely would not risk my livelihood on margin. So that's why I was very glad that I went through all of my accounts and peeled off all of my margin risk. I had, while I was still working, I felt a little bit more comfortable about taking some margin risk because I knew that I had other income and I could just, okay, if I get a margin call, I can take money off of this loan or my HELOC or credit cards or my paycheck and cover it. But now that I only have one income, I have to be damn sure that I will be able to sustain that income through a large drawdown, especially if the bear market uh, comes back in full swing in 2026/2027 ish. So let's just think about an imaginary scenario of my W-2 job earns me six figures, right? I'm making 100 grand a year. If I need to recreate that income, there's some TradFi option sellers that thought that I was being a little bit aggressive with shooting for 1% returns a week. And if I just concede that argument and I say, okay, well, what about a 0.5%? Because there are some very reasonable option sellers that aren't even like orange pilled, right? These are just people out there selling options on regular TradFi stuff, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, uh, Palantir. I'm not suggesting any of those things. I'm just saying these are a lot of the stocks that are just, they're just talked about all the time in TradFi. I don't find the options premium on most of those terribly exciting anymore. But I have traded all of those in the past. And before I kind of locked in on MicroStrategy, those were fine. Those were reasonable returns, better than the S&P 500, that's for damn sure. But let's just say, okay, I need to generate six figures of income. If I'm going to collect a 0.5% a week, which works out to about 2% a month, 0.5% a week over 52 weeks is going to be what, 25%? Let's just do 25%. Let's bust out the calculator. So our total portfolio would have to be big enough that 25% of it annually equals 100,000. So if we take the 100,000 and divide by the 25%, that means that if I needed 100 grand in annual income, and I'd probably have to figure out taxes too, because I'm going to pay taxes off the top of that. But let's just ballpark this for now. Actually, you know what? Let's just add it back in, because if I'm gonna assume that I'm gonna have to pay 30% taxes, then 500,000 is probably a safer number, and that's a nice round number anyway. So 400,000 minimum, but let's bump it up to 500,000, assuming that we're gonna have to pay taxes on this money. Is it possible to retire on this? That would be that would be fine as long as the number go up forever, or trade sideways, but the number can also go down. So in this scenario, if my worst case scenario is that in the bear market, MicroStrategy might fall 50% from its current value, and I might be seeing 200,000, then my account portfolio of a half a million is going to drop to 250,000, and 250 times 0.25% is only 60 grand now. Now we're talking about eating, if I need 100,000 and now I got to cut down to 62, now we're talking about eating ramen and driving an old car that could be breaking down all the time and not having fun on vacation and all of that jazz. So in this scenario, if I'm imagining that it could collapse in half, now I need to double that half a million and go to at least 1 million, right? If MicroStrategy cuts falls to $200 a share, and then my portfolio gets cut in half, now I'm back to the 500,000. And if I can get the 25% a year, now I've got the 125. I can pay 25 in taxes and then have my 100,000 left over. So this is kind of the scenario that I went through. I didn't just reach a certain number and then say, oh yeah, I can retire on this. I'm like, no. What is my worst case scenario? And then can I still live on that number? But if you want to be even more conservative, then you would have to say, well, maybe MicroStrategy crashes to 100. And if it goes to 100 a share, then you'd have to have, oh God, how much would you have to have? In order to get the 500,000 divided by 100 a share, I need 5,000 shares of it. And at current prices, yeah, I'd need like $2 million in my portfolio. And in that scenario, even if MicroStrategy crashes by 75%, then I still have the 500,000. And then if I'm getting 0.5% a week, then I can still, feed my family. I think that's being very, very conservative. And the number that I kind of calculated, because I listen to these dividend investors all the time, and they're like, their version of engagement farming is like, could you retire on 5 million? And I'm like, holy shit, are you serious? Like, just running these numbers, if I wanted to be extremely aggressive, I felt like I could probably retire on like a 500,000 portfolio. And these guys are talking about, could I live off the dividend interest of 5 million freaking dollars? 500K is super, super aggressive and not really accounting for much downside. But, if I just wanted to eat Franks and beans for a couple of years, waiting for the market to recover, I could probably get away with it. But this is the process that I went through. I basically said, how much do I need? How much do I think I could collect in a worst case scenario environment? And then I made that the number. And then really, when I showed that number to my wife, I had basically gotten to that number. She's like, well, if you got that number, then you can probably get double that number, right? And I was like, God damn it. But sometimes you need your wife to be a little bit more worried about the nest than you are. So that was probably good advice. And then once I had basically doubled the number that I came up with, which also met her number, uh, that was when I started really picking out my dates. Like, okay, I'm going to give my 2 weeks notice. Um, and even with my job, like I wanted to go out. Part of me wanted to just be like, okay, I quit as of today. I'm out. Deuces. But I'm like, nah, let me do it right. I even offered them, hey, if you guys want to give me a voluntary separation agreement, pay me a severance or whatever, I'll stay on through January and I can do a really nice turnover. I'll make sure that everything is, um, you know, all the projects that I'm working on. We had like a go live in January. I'm like, okay, I'll stay through MLK Day, and I'll get this stuff done. And they're like, nah, we don't need you. So I was like, all right, cool. My I'm putting in my 2 weeks then. If you don't need me, I don't I don't need you. I'll take my ball and go home. But so I think that was my answer to this question, and I really like the way that 88 Sats covered it in the video. Is that you know maybe it's not your time right now, and especially if you're I've been selling options since May of 2020, and so if you don't have that level of comfortability with the process itself either, so then you would be like, hey, I'm about to quit. And as I'm quitting, now I have to learn the strategy to support myself. Yeah, that's a that's a recipe for disaster. So I like the caution that he was urging, because I know it gets a lot of people's attention. Like, hey, this guy quit his job. I mean, everybody wants to fucking quit their job. So don't put the cart before the horse. Definitely, if you're going to employ some of these option selling strategies, or I know some people that claim, say that they make money, uh, momentum trading or whatever. Well, prove it. Can you execute that strategy for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and make consistent profits? If you can, that's probably something. Um, there's a I've talked about it several times, but there's a number that I like to think about. And when I hit that number, I feel like I've reached critical mass on that account portfolio. And if I'm getting 1% returns, that number would be 10,000 shares of something. And it could be any stock, really, but it amps up the returns in this way. If I have 10,000 shares, you know what? I'm going to do it the conservative way too, with the 0.5%. But if I have 10,000 shares and I sell an option that gets me 1% returns, multiply it by 0.01, that's going to give me enough profits to buy 100 more shares. And if I buy 100 shares, if you're at all familiar with the covered call process, now I can sell an additional covered call. So with 10,000 shares, I could sell 100 covered calls. But if I plow all of those profits, like assuming that I don't have to pay the bills with that money, if I plowed 100% of those profits into buying another 100 shares, well, now I can sell 101 covered calls. And then the next week, when I do it again, now I'll be selling 102 covered calls. And then the week after, 103 covered calls. And in that sense, instead of earning 1% a week times 52 weeks and getting 50% returns, it would be 1.01 raised to the power of 52. And that should be about 67% returns. But let's do the conservative case. If I'm only getting 0.5% a week, then I should need twice as many shares. So I'd have to start with 20,000 shares of something and getting point zero 0.01, so 0.005. Yeah, that gets me to 100 shares a week. So it's just all depends on how much returns you're getting weekly on the premium. But if you can get to a point where you're able to add an additional 100 shares every week, then instead of the returns being additive, meaning 0.5% a week would be 26% a year, 0.5% times 52 weeks. Now it would be 0.00, whoops, excuse me, 1.00, damn it, 5 raised to the 52nd power, because we're going to do it 52 times a year. Now it goes up from the 26% to 29%. So it just gives you that extra little bit of juice on the returns. Now, I said a lot of the TradFi people do this, and they're not even like orange pilled and locked into Bitcoin derivatives like I am. But and these numbers fluctuate as well. So just because I can get 1% or 2% this week doesn't mean I won't be able to barely get 0.5% or 0.25% next week. So these numbers are also not promised. So please keep that in mind. And that's another reason to be very conservative on the amount, because if I assume I'm going to get 1% and then I can only get 0.5%, well, now my income is cut in half. And if I can only get 0.25%, now my income has been cut by, 75%? But in the current environment where, I'm about to sign in. Nope. Okay, good. Where MicroStrategy's IV rank is 45. This is pretty standard, right? So IV rank goes from 0 to 100, and it tracks the IV for the last year. So I would say probably half the time it's going to be under 50, and the other half of the time it's going to be over 50. So the current premiums that can be gotten is probably fairly reasonable right now. It will go down as IV rank trends down, maybe closer to 30. But getting 1% of the $400 price would mean that for next week, I would have to collect at least $4. And this is not going to be exact because I'm getting an extra free trading day here. So the real strike might be closer to 500. But this is actually baking in $150 worth of callaway value, meaning the price of MicroStrategy could go up, like 30%, over 30%, and I could still collect this 1%. Like 0.5% is only $200. So like the 600 strike, that's building in 50% callaway value at current prices. But just keep in mind, as implied volatility contracts, you might only be able to get $100 at the 600 strike. If you need $200, you might have to go down to the 500. So this is all fluid, and it's another risk that you have to plan for. And that's why you can't just say, oh, I'm a new millionaire, and now that I got 7 figures, I can retire because I heard on the internet that you can just get free money on your shares. That ain't how it works. So, you can go weekly. That's kind of the easiest to calculate. But I also like going out to 45 days to expiration. And generally, I will try to manage or roll this call every 2 to 3 weeks. So best case scenario, if I buy it back in 2 weeks for half price and then roll it out 2 more weeks for full price, then for 45 days, I would need to average out to 1% a week. I would need to sell these 740 for 1600. In 2 weeks, I buy it back for 8. If I want to be conservative and say, okay, well, maybe it'll take me 3 weeks to buy it back for half price, then that only works out to what, $200 a week. So I would need closer to like 2,400. Yeah, so I might only be able to sell the 600 strike for 45 days, but still, that's 50% out of the money. In 3 weeks, if I can buy this back for 1,300, divide that by 3. Yeah, that's about 430 a week. So there's a couple of different ways to do it, but for me, for my comfort level, I needed to reverse engineer it by figuring out the number that I need, imagining how much MicroStrategy might crash in the bear market, and then making sure that I can still pay the bills with the premiums if MicroStrategy is down like 75%. So that's how I decided that I was ready. And if somebody, ends up getting fluent with options, maybe they'll use that method to figure out if they're ready to retire, or maybe they'll have an even better way to figure it out. But that's how I did it. So I hope that was instructive. And let me just check the chats. The price of 404, I don't think there's any trades that I actually need to make today. So this will probably just be me running my mouth and then checking chats. All right, so let's check this out. Hello, Fire. Good morning to you as well. David says, I hear you and see you twice. Oh, it must have been, yeah, that was probably, what was that, the Inception, where it's just picture inside a picture. MicroStrategy Voyage says, yo, good morning to you, no fate. Yeah, David says, yeah, don't burn bridges. Yeah, I think it was probably the way to go. All right, throw any of your questions in there if you want. And let me just check YouTube real quick. So Ron says, LOL, my wife said the same. She's worried about drug coverage and is convinced we'll end up living under a bridge homeless. Yeah, it's funny because after I put in my 2 weeks, I think MicroStrategy was like at 450, 475, something like that. So I was just riding high. I'm like, holy shit, it's going to 1,000 and I'm just going to be just taking baths in dollar bills and shit, right? And then when it crashed back down to 375, I think my net worth collapsed by, let's see, MicroStrategy collapsed 25%, so my net worth probably collapsed by 40%. So that was a brutal 2 weeks, and it was like, oh shit, can I unquit? Like, is it too late? Did you hire my position yet? But no, I followed this, basically this procedure, and I figured if MicroStrategy even crashed 75%, I could probably still just eat ramen and be fine. So we'll see. Ron says, he's like, I'm like, we have enough to retire. Yeah, that's the same thing I said, and she's like, nah, double it. And then when I showed her that number, I said, okay, so what's your number? Because she's got her job too. And she's like, double it again. I'm like, fuck. Okay, I guess I'll go back and get on that. But then the price crashed back down, and I was like, okay, I guess you're gonna keep working for a while longer. I think she could quit, but chicks are gonna be chicks. Huck says, hi. Delete the account. What's your personal? Delete the account. What's your personal MSTR price prediction for the next 1 to 12 months? I don't do price predictions. I don't even do the valuations. And there's a difference between a valuation model, which I'm not prepared to do. But the people that I've seen doing them, you basically input all of the things that you think the stock will do in the future, and then you add percentage values to that. Like Stephen Mark Ryan is the guy that I follow for daily Tesla hype, and you can even sign up and get his valuation models and all that stuff. You can pay for that, but um, he basically says, all right, there's a if he figures there's a 1% chance that they get Optimus going with the robots, and then that's a $1 trillion opportunity. Okay, then 1% of a trillion should be reflected in a fair valuation model. And so, you just work that out, and then you'd figure out your valuation model. But that doesn't have anything to do with a price prediction, because the market is irrational, and sometimes it will be oversold and undervalued, and it'll be below that valuation that you came up with. And sometimes FOMO will just, you might have a blow off top, and it just well exceeds what your valuation model is. And then it'll probably hit some kind of resistance and then come back down and find support. So, I don't do valuation models or price predictions. I'm basically an orange pilled Bitcoiner. So I'm number go up forever with Bitcoin. And since MicroStrategy has more Bitcoin than any other publicly traded company, I guess excluding the ETFs, right? But any single corporation, I guess, and more Bitcoin than entire countries, then I'm bullish on the stock. It's not that I don't think bear markets can't happen and that the price can't go down, but yeah, I'm either bullish or not, and I don't really pick numbers. Huck says, found you through MicroStrategy True North. Love your takes. Appreciate it. Oh, so I misread that. I thought Huck was saying, hi, delete the account. But delete is the handle. Sorry, delete. Uh, I get it now. What's your personal price prediction? So that question was from delete. And then Huck says, found you. Okay, I got it. Reading is fundamental. And then Huck says, just started getting into covered call learning, know the basics, but don't have a strategy. You have you have 305 episodes. Do you have any suggestions on ones to listen to? Yeah, so you're posting on YouTube. YouTube search feature is a little bit better. I think it was somebody just asked me for it. I have it. So on X, I have an article pinned to the top of my profile, and it's like a mega thread. It's probably got 10 videos on it or whatever, and those are all kind of the basics that I put together. But if you searched YouTube for the wheel strategy, covered calls is half of the wheel strategy. That one might get you there, but I'll see if I can find it. I have so many videos; it's hard for me to find them myself. But I did do one. I don't know if it was the 100th or somewhere around the 100, 200 episodes. I kind of reset the room a little bit and went back and recorded a wheel strategy video, which also includes covered call selling. So I'll try to link that. Josh says, hey, Nithu, I'm opening a Tasty Trade account and heard you have a referral link. Where do I find that? Yeah, a couple of people have asked, and I keep saying, all right, I'll get it, and I'll put it in the show notes or something. And then I keep forgetting. I do appreciate people trying to leave me a tip. That is totally awesome. So I'll try to remember to do it this time. I truly keep forgetting. But if you know any friends or family that have one, please just keep it in the family and give those guys your referrals. But I'll try to put it in there. I promise, unless I forget. Bitcoin, Bitcoin, not crypto. Good to see you. What was your job before this? I worked in IT, and I I worked on medical record software, but a niche part of medical record software specifically for the laboratory. So something that nobody knows about, nobody cares. And it's funny, my entire life I've probably had a little bit of imposter syndrome because I was a lab tech when I got out of the Navy, and so I didn't go to college for it. In the Navy, you would get like a certificate or something back in the day. But even though a lot of times we felt like we were better trained than the civilians, you didn't quite get your quite get your flowers because you didn't have your associate's degree or your bachelor's degree or whatnot. And I eventually went back and got my degree, but you kind of just feel like a second class citizen if you don't have it. You know, people don't see that title behind your name and they're like, oh, yeah, you just, all you got was like OJT or something. That's the way to look at you. And then I went from there and I kind of backed my way into IT profession because I was just working in the lab, and the lab information specialist quit and they couldn't find a replacement for her. And after a couple of months, they were just like, "Hey, you're good with computers, right? Do you want this job?" And so I wasn't even qualified. I didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing. They sent me for a little bit of training, but I picked it up as I went along. But so still kind of felt like an imposter in the IT world because again, I didn't have an IT degree, and kept picking up specialized knowledge, um, and then just stuck in the field and kept learning more. But then when I picked up, option selling, I basically just taught myself watching hundreds upon hundreds of videos by this guy In the Money, and then also Tasty Trade videos. All of their research is excellent. I've got an options beginners playlist of like stuff that I put together of other people's accounts. Maybe I'll put that in the show notes as well. Just to get you can watch my stuff, but you can watch somebody else's stuff too, and you can see how things match up or are different. But Kamikaze Cash has got some really good option selling videos. He does one on the wheel and covered calls and cash secured puts and some others. But I've got all of those in my beginners playlist. But none of those are my videos. It's just stuff that helped me. I'll link that as well. But yeah, so I don't have, and I'm not a financial advisor. I didn't get a finance degree. I don't have any of that stuff. So all self-taught. So basically, my whole life, I've just kind of felt like, when am I gonna get put on one of these freaking uh, podcasts with somebody who actually knows what the fuck they're doing and embarrasses me? So I always got that little nagging anxiety in the back of my head. But yeah, thanks for the question. Um, okay, Huck says just followed you on X. Check out the pin post. Super. Oh, actually, I skipped a couple here. Delete the account says, appreciate you, brother. So great learning more about selling options in real time. Yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to do. I was very hesitant. I started showing just my Robinhood account at first, and I was trading my main account privately because I wasn't really sure how much I wanted to show. I wasn't sure how much operational security I wanted to deploy, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to show my real face at one point. But um, there's an expose that CoffeeZilla did on option sellers and people that would sell, I don't know, $10,000 courses and all this bullshit. And these people would not even display their true profits and losses, their P&L. And he exposed a bunch of them. But there's this one guy, and his channel is legit called Real P&L, something like that. And he interviewed him, and when CoffeeZilla found him, he's like, "Hey, this guy's legit," and he's straight up showing his actual P&L. And that was kind of like the standard for me. I was like, well, you know what? What if I just do this with complete transparency? I'll show all the wins, I'll show all the losses, and um, I wasn't doing lives at first. I didn't even have, you know, a live stream service, but I was trying to, just record every trade, so that it would, wouldn't be confused with some of these scammers. And I don't sell anything, so I don't sell courses. Sometimes people DM me, they're like, "Hey, I'll pay you for your time," blah blah blah. I don't do any of that. So definitely not trying to sell anybody anything. I thought I was going to get monetized. I was like, "Oh, my account's going to take off. I'm going to get monetized. That's going to be like this extra revenue stream." But from the way that Ben was talking about it, it's like, nah, you can't live off that shit. So I've I've got I guess I haven't really even been account building as much as I was when I had 100 followers and 75% of them were bots. But if I ever get monetized one day, I'm not gonna turn the money down. But we'll see if I can find something fun to do with it as well. Swoldemort says, "What's your vibe with the number of True North deep in the money long call holders going short gamma since the 550 peak? Seems like the masses are starting to misprice short gamma risk, missed opportunities." The long call holders going short gamma since the 550. Yeah, that one's confusing to me. I'm not. Are you talking about um, potentially adding some covered call selling, or or thinking about the gamma squeeze? Yeah, clarify that one for me. Delete the account. LOL. That's why the username, because it always fucks with people. Yeah, and that's the thing. When I was account building, I was like, oh, should I get a decent profile pic, and should I, use my real name and be all like professional or whatnot? Somebody was even saying, look, at some point you might have to just rebrand and I don't know, be a little bit more straight laced, I suppose. But I guess if it's like super important one day, I guess maybe I could do it. But I'm just having fun with it. And Grit actually, an ex user actually guessed my handle, what it means. So that was kind of crazy. Um, Huck says thanks. You're welcome. And Swoldemort says, I like seeing Grain of Salt posting. I think he reps an average long gamma MicroStrategy investor, and he seems really hesitant now. Yeah, I don't know if he's just hesitant or if he just ran out of dry powder. Um, but yeah, I mean, his account. I don't know how much his account is. I just know my account is probably like a rounding error compared to his. So when we went to 500 something and then back down to 375, if my account collapsed 40% off all time highs, and I would say 40% of my account was straight shares, and I don't know what his ratio is. I don't know how many, if he has shares and just all long calls or whatever, but I can imagine that the slap in the face that my account took off those all time highs when I was celebrating. Uh, he's got to have extreme emotional fortitude to be able to handle those wild swings in his account. So more power to him. Uh, Dude Face, Soleil finally got it together to write covered call and MicroStrategy in your Roth. Went to December 20th, 570 strike. Hopefully it's safe. Didn't want to be too greedy at first. Yeah. Eventually, no matter how safe you are, like, how is it when I say it? No matter how unlikely something is, over a long enough period of time, everything is inevitable. So it doesn't matter, if something only has a 1% chance, well, after you do it 100 times, guess what? You're probably going to get wrecked once. So I do like your caution, but the only way to be 100% safe is just not to do it. So you have to be ready for that when it happens. All right, let me switch over to. I'll come back to Howard in a minute. Let me switch back over to X. Yeah, Gunrong says, "Good morning, you all. Unless you're in the deep south, then it's all y'all. You all is singular. All y'all's plural." Higby says, I have 50K shares of MicroStrategy. My wife avoids ordering appetizers. Okay. Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, it's funny. Once, you know, I was in the Navy. I worked my regular job, so I've never had this much money before in my life. But when I decided I was gonna quit, yeah, my wife's like, "Okay, we're reining in the spending," and I'm like, "I've been trying to rein your spending in for 25 freaking years." It took me having to quit for you to finally figure it out. Curtis says 50% profit and roll. Why not 60% or 75%? Especially when you are right directionally. Absolutely. That's a good point. If you're right directionally, then yes, you may. Um, I managed some covered calls that I put on. I think I put one on at like when the price was like 405 or something. The numbers don't matter. But then the price went down to 385. And of course, those covered calls that I sold, like 2 days later, I could buy them back for half price. So that's what I did. I didn't wait 2 weeks. So that's a very good point, Curtis. The scenario that I was illustrating is basically like if the price stays the same forever, doesn't go up, doesn't go down, then on average I would be managing those every 2 weeks or so. And this is why. So Tasty Trades basically standard operating procedures is you attempt to manage that profit at 50%. And let's just see why. And we're talking 45 days to expiration here. So let's look at, I was looking at the 600s, right? So at 43 days to expiration, if I sold a covered call now, you can get exactly 45 days to expiration on Tuesdays, but it's not Tuesday. So $2,600, let's remember that. In 1 week, the 600 strike will have gone down from 2,600 to 21. And then another week, we'll see how this close is to my ideal number here. 1,500. So not quite, can't quite buy this back for half price. If this was 1,300 or less, then I would be able to do it. But certainly by 3 weeks, this is going to be under 1,300. Yeah. So sometime between the 2 week mark and the 3 week mark, it's going to get to 50%. And it's not necessarily the 50% number versus 60 or 75. It's that according to Tasty Trades research, theta acceleration begins around 90 days to expiration, and it keeps increasing. And then at 45 days, they claim that theta for out of the money covered calls has reached its maximum acceleration, and that lasts for 2 to 3 weeks. And that 2 to 3 week period is basically lands along that 50% sweet spot. So, you could do it at 40% or 60. The percent doesn't really matter, but yes, to the other point about if you're right directionally, absolutely you can manage it early. And certainly if I sold a covered call for the 2,600 and then the price of the underlying collapses, and in 2 days I could buy it back for 1,000, like hell yeah, I'm doing that, right? I'm gonna take advantage of that, of being right directionally. And then at that point, I just have to decide, do I put on another covered call at a lower strike to collect more premium? Or do I just sit in my hands and bag hold until the price goes back up? So yeah, those are definitely finer points to the strategy. And thanks for bringing those up. AI Gone Wrong. Wheel is a good exercise for those in the chat. Short out of the money puts are good income as well if you are perma bullish on MicroStrategy. Yeah. Uh, the cash secured puts generally has a similar profit profile to covered calls. And I'm just going to go to next week, right? If I sell an at the money covered call at the 407, it's going to pay me $2,600. And if I sell an at the money put at 407.50, it's $2,600. But I think what he was describing is like, you know, where I was building in what 30% out of the money on the covered calls. You can go down here and let's just go 25% out of the money to the 300s. Maybe not the weeklies. But yeah, I mean, if you don't want to risk getting exercised, or if you think 350 is a fair value, you're like, you know what, I don't want to buy shares of MicroStrategy over 350. Okay. Well, you could set a limit order and say, I'll buy, 350 shares of MicroStrategy at 350, or excuse me, 100 shares of MicroStrategy at 350, and you're going to lock up $35,000 of your dry powder. But what if MicroStrategy never gets to 350 again? Well, now you just have cash that's getting eroded to inflation. You're not invested in anything. So instead of a limit order, what I prefer to do is what he described, and I would just sell this put at the strike that I like. And by next week, if it does go down to below 350, then I get the shares at the price I wanted. This doesn't stop the price from going down to 300, so it's not like you can't lose money. But if the price does stay at 400 or goes up to 450 or 500 or whatever, at least you didn't lock up your collateral for nothing and get paid jack shit. You're going to get, paid $600 a week to potentially buy this at the price you want. You may never get it, but yeah, a lot of option sellers love cash secured puts. Some people just sell covered calls. Some people just sell cash secured puts. Their profit profiles are very similar. The wheel is a combination of the two, and sometimes I run the wheel in the Robinhood account on the mining stocks just to demonstrate that procedure. Um, and it definitely works. In the current environment, it may not outperform MicroStrategy because unlimited upside, I think, is probably going to trump the covered call and the cash secured put strategy overall. Um, but it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing, right? If you're like the guy that has 50,000 shares, you know, you can sell covered calls on 10% of them. And even if those get called away, you still got 45,000. Oh God, that's a sick number. Um, but love to hear it. Yeah. So that's how that works. 42 trillion. That's a link to one of my something. Oh, that's the link to my wheel. Okay, cool. Appreciate that. Kobe said, "How was the Navy?" So I love my Navy brothers and sisters. I have tons of friendships. Uh, every large organization like that's going to have good and bad, but I I don't like the idea of being a pawn in in politicians' little war games. So I'm not sure that there's been a morally justified war in my entire lifetime, and maybe not even the last 100 years, depending on uh, how people view World War One and World War Two. Even the even like the Civil War, it could have been like around the banks. So you know, I'm orange pilled. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm a Bitcoiner. And I'm hoping that, Bitcoin will destroy the fiat uh, proof of war system that we've developed over the centuries. But yeah, I can't really advise anyone to join the military at this point. I think it's more important to keep yourself alive and stack sats. But great people. I just I can't imagine myself taking orders from people who are basically just won't lose a night's sleep over you if you get killed. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a downer for you. But I made a lot of friendships, and to this day. So it was a good experience overall. I was probably I was pretty gung ho when I was in. I didn't really get white pilled. I don't know. Did I get black pilled, white pilled? I'm not sure what pilled I got before I was orange pilled, but it wasn't bad. I would definitely, if people had to join the military, like at least join the Air Force and maybe not get yourself killed. But yeah, please don't go out there and make yourself a bullet sponge, advancing the desires of the rich and powerful. All right, MicroStrategy says building skill equity. Absolutely. DOCJ, how long did it take you to get confident trading? So I started trading options right after the COVID crash. So everybody was making money, right? I started in May 2020, and I was like, I took all my money out of my retirement. It was like 70 grand. And after about a year and a half, I had turned it into somewhere between like 210 and 240. So I'm like, I'm a badass, I tripled my account in like a year and a half. The S&P 500's only up 50%, or I don't know if it was up 50% or double or whatever, but I'm like, I beat the S&P 500. But in the back of my mind, I was kind of still paranoid. I'm like, am I just getting lucky? Like everybody's making money, so I'm just doing what everybody else is doing and getting lucky. And sure enough, uh, I had switched off of my strict covered call strategy, and I started doing poor man's covered call strategies. And instead of owning shares, you are able to use some leverage, um, and you actually own leaps instead of 100 shares. And I had a ton of Tesla. Well, that was great when Tesla went up to $400 a share, but over the next, what is it, 3 to 6 months, it crashed to like 100 a share, and I rode that damn thing all the way down. So all of the money that I had made, I basically gave it all back to the casino. It took me a year and a half to get it, and it only took me, I think, 3 months to give it all back. And I was basically right where I started. So uh, it took me about a year and a half to get overconfident. And then it took me 3 months to throw in the towel and be like, okay, I have to like reboot, start over from scratch, figure out, where I fucked up. And so that was May 2020. That was through the end of 2020, end of 2021, got wrecked in 2022, kind of into 2023, and then it was 2023 and 2024 when I got back to basics and dug myself out of that hole. So I guess it took me like 4 years. And what is it? Outliers. That book where he talks about the 10,000 hours. I think that's just an estimate. Like you don't have to literally count the 10,000 hours to get there, but yeah, between listening to hundreds, maybe 1,000 hours of videos and another 1,000 hours of practice, that's about how long it took. Higby says it's okay. We still have the screenshot. Nah, I forget what the hell I was even talking about when you put that comment. Uh, Fan says I have the same amount of January 300 calls 2025 and June 530s, would you try to exercise the Januaries by selling Junes or sell the Januaries for profit and roll? I'm not a tax professional, but some of that you may want to think about, because when you exercise something, as far as I know, that's not a taxable event. You are basically just setting what your cost basis would be. So you're gonna your cost basis on those would be 300 plus whatever you paid for the calls. I think that gets calculated in. So if you don't want taxable, if you want as small of a tax footprint as possible, then you would want to sell as few as you can to pay for exercising. And then you'd only have to pay the taxes on the ones that you sold. Anything that you roll, you're going to have to pay taxes on. So let me just read the question again. Would you try to exercise the Januaries by selling Junes? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, whichever ones you got to sell something to pay for the exercising. See, or sell the Januaries for profit and roll. Yeah, that's a pretty individual situation. For me personally, I still probably have too much leverage. I cut like 20% of my leverage out and bought straight shares with them, and I felt a little bit better about it. But I mean, I'm still bullish for the next year, so I think rolling long calls will probably print, but not all of the ones that I have done have printed. Um, I definitely like as much time as possible to be right, and anything under 90 days, 45 days starts to scare me a little bit. All right, Angra Buddha says, "Hell yeah, I've been laddering spreads." Yeah, I added some spreads. I won a couple, but man, I've got some January, was it like 600, 700s, and like 800, 900s. Those look like they could all be losers, so we'll see. Canal says, "I still vote for more Soleil hosted spaces." Yeah, and I almost just started doing them this week because this tabbing back and forth is a complete pain in the ass. But sometimes I feel like I just need to demonstrate. Um, but yeah, maybe I'll do some spaces this week, especially till my monitors come in. Angry Buddha, good work, man. I tell people these lessons are expensive. Yeah, they definitely are. And sometimes the best thing that can happen to you as a new trader is to get wrecked. Tom Sosnoff even said in one of his videos that one of the best things that happened to him, I think, like, I can't remember if he sold like 10 iron condors or something, and they just were all losers, and he just learned from that point, like, okay, I have to position size, like profits are not promised. And if he had won and those had all been profitable, then maybe he would have just assumed that everything he ever does is going to be gold and his shit don't stink. So yeah, a lot of times you lose, or excuse me, you learn the most from the losing trades. MicroStrategy Voyage, I appreciate you sharing all of your information with us. I will continue to buy and hold until I feel educated enough to trade options. Excellent strategy. All right, back to YouTube. And then once I get caught up on these, we're going to call it a day. Where did I lead off? I think it was Howard. Yeah. Howard says, "Were you writing bridges between machines and EMRs? That's impressive." Writing bridges. If that means interfaces, I was configuring them, but nothing back end. Like, I'm not a programmer. I don't know any of that crap. Yeah. There's interfaces between all of the lab analyzers and the EMR, and then there's also interfaces between the EMR and reference lab, so that would be more like foreign system interfaces. But I appreciate you saying how impressive it is, but you might be the only one who's impressed. Dude face, mainly I've been in puts and just shares held, always afraid of the upside. Yeah, exactly. I got shook in March when I sold the 1400 strikes and the price went to 1700. And so I missed out on like $90,000 of upside on 3 contracts. So that was pretty brutal. And I've had PTSD ever since, which is why I could probably I could certainly put on 20 covered calls, 25 covered calls on my shares plus the leaps. But if I added up all the long delta, I could probably manage to put on 40 or 50 covered calls, and I only have on 8 right now. So I've definitely been shaking off the strategy quite a bit. You're welcome, Bitcoin, not crypto. Delete the account, Bitcoin, not crypto. You're goated too. Yeah, definitely. And it says monetization on YouTube isn't too bad. Okay. Well, I can cross my fingers and hope for that too. I don't even know what the requirements are. I know what they are on X. I can click a button and I still don't have enough clicks or whatever, impressions. I think it's like 5 million or something. I don't even know how close I am. I was tracking it for a while, but I was nowhere even close. I was just like, all right, fuck it. Maybe it'll never happen. Dude face, you can make shirts and merch at some point. Yeah. Yeah, that would be funny. People walking around with my profile pic on a shirt. Um that stupid ass profile pic too. Back when the one of my favorite memes was like, Clown World, when we had all the woke insanity. And so I asked I can't remember which AI, but I asked it to create an image of a sad dead clown, and that was a sad dead clown emoji, and that's the picture that it came up with. So I just slapped that on my on my X and my YouTube profile. So that's where that came from. And then on X, of course, I added laser eyes to it. So that's the origin story on my profile pic. And I just it's just kind of grown on me now. Like I can't imagine replacing that with my stupid ass face. Swoldemort says covered call selling no longer rolling up and out. Seems like everyone is getting more delta heavy and gamma light. More delta heavy. Yeah. My account got way more delta heavy, and that's the kind of thing that I didn't even notice happened. So I was buying these deep out of the money calls. So like when I was buying the 530s and the 650s, that was the top of the chain back when the price was 150. Um, and so I had tiny amounts of delta, and I had, a whole ton of gamma exposure. But now that those things are close to being in the money, I'm like way heavier on delta. And I realized that my leveraged delta exposure had just ballooned to more than my actual shares delta. And I didn't realize it, you know what I mean, at first. But somebody told me, they were like, oh man, I'm having some heartburn because he bought a bunch of leverage near the top, and then his account was just getting wrecked. And I was like, well, how many long, what's your ratio of long calls? And they were like, oh, I have like 80 or 90% long calls on my account. And I was like, holy shit, that's a lot. And then I was like, well, let me look and see what my account is. And I had like 1,500 delta in shares, and I had like, I don't know, it was like 3,500, 4,000 delta in long long call exposure. And I was like, holy shit, I'm in the exact same position this guy is in. But it took him talking about his account and me recognizing that was way over leveraged from my personal comfort level to realize that I had fallen into that trap myself. So I peeled off a bunch of my calls and rotated them into shares just so I could try to get that ratio where I felt better about it. But I still couldn't help myself but buy some of the 1080s, and I think all those Januaries that I bought are probably losers. But yeah, if I was in the market for more for more gamma, I'd probably be buying like I did buy some December and January's. I can't remember if the January's 2026 that I got were the 1080s. I gotta look and see. Well, I guess I can look and see right now because I'm in here. The 2026 ones. Okay, I got the 890s. These were the highest in the chain when I bought them 21 days ago. So yeah, I don't have much at the top of the chain right now. But that's the thing. When the number's going up, you just get heavy on delta, and that's the choice you have to make. Like, okay, do I want to let it go even farther in the money and just exercise possibly, or and take diminishing returns, or do you roll them out for a higher strike and add more gamma back in? It's risk versus reward, I guess. Then Soldemore says, regarding the short gamma or decreased long gamma exposure might be a better description. Gotcha. Yeah. And then convertible bond arbitrage has become mainstream, and it seems like the average MSTR holder has accepted that MicroStrategy price has lost its explosiveness. If we run to 700 plus, the the convertible bond ARB short gamma positions. Yeah, I gotta watch that guy's interview with Jeff again, so that I can understand the convertible bond market maybe a little bit better. I remember feeling like I was getting smarter watching that video, but it's been a few weeks, so now I'm kind of like feeling stupid again. And then Swoldemar says, actually add to the gamma ramp. Yeah, that one's over my head too. So that's my self-taught option investor uh, lack of training is probably coming in. I'm not sure what a gamma ramp is. Huck says, what do you do when you don't have dry powder, but don't you want to sell covered calls because you are unsure of the potential upswing from catalysts, etc.? Do you just sit on your hands or write them anyways? So right now, I basically write just enough covered calls to pay the mortgage and the light bill and groceries and the car note and all of that stuff. That's my baseline. And then if if the price shoots up to 450 or 500 or, whatever, and if I see implied volatility spike, if the IV rank goes over 50, 70, 80, 90, 100 or over 100, those are my add position signals. That's when I'm going to be adding covered calls. So for now, I am sitting on my hands on like over half of my potential covered call collateral, just to make sure that I capture all of the upside. I'm going to continue to do that through 2025, and my assumption is that the bear market takes over, and I will begin aggressively selling covered calls, maybe on 100% of my positions. We'll see. And I'll probably continue to do that through 2026, 2027, and we'll see if the bear market really happens or not. And then I'll have to reevaluate then. Swoldemore, since the convertible bond delta hedge goes to zero, a long gamma and Vega. And then Swoldemore's replying to Huck, says, sit on your hands, my dude, or sell far out of the money short dated puts if you're on a margin account. All right. You can sell the 8 DTE 350s, 350 puts for 84%. Yeah. Delete the account says, wow, Bitcoin might finally be breaking out. Oh, what are we at? I'm over here running my mouth and I don't even know what's happening. Oh, sweet. My live stream pumped Bitcoin up 2%. Okay. Dude face. Exactly what I've been doing. Selling puts in the money. You've been selling puts in the money? It's a bit like covered calls. When I expect the stock to move up, I capture premium. Plus, you get the cash now. Yeah. So yeah, it's weird. So I was thinking about this the other day. Selling covered calls and selling cash secured puts is like getting in a time machine, going a week into the future, taking profits, and then taking that bag of cash, getting back in the time machine, and then coming back to the present day and being able to spend it. Now, granted, you're limiting your upside, but there's got to be some power in that. Like, you know, you can buy 100 shares and then immediately take profits. It's just weird insanity to even think that that's possible. But that's what it is. Dude Face says, I just give myself time to be wrong. It's always a good idea. And Swoldemart says 100%. If you target strikes with high gamma, the gamma acts as a magnet because of market maker hedges. And then 2023 Apple calls when Icon disclosed his position, which was my trial by fire, 5K to 350K, right back down to 5K. And then Bitcoin Borg, currently at like 24 shares of MicroStrategy. Arg, I feel so late. Well, maybe you'll get blessed by the market gods with a 10-to-1 split in 2025, and you'll have 240 shares. Swoldemart says, when Saylor does the... Shit, I scrolled. Where did I go? Well, I must have scrolled way too far. Hold on a second. Oh, Swoldemart says, when Saylor does the next 10-to-1, he'll have 240. Oh, yeah. We, great minds think alike. Josh Penny, Nithyu, can you talk me off a cliff? I don't need to sell covered calls for income. Would it be safer, possibly more profitable, to just hold my leaps into next year instead and do nothing? I think that hodling probably will be more profitable unless you're extremely surgical. So climb that ladder when when the price went to 475 or something, and implied vol had just, blew off the top. He knew that he could, sell covered calls at extreme implied volatility and profit from that. So he did very well with that. But if you're, hesitating and you don't know when to get in and get out, then I think, yeah, just hodling is probably be the best thing for for people. Selling covered calls and whatnot is, it takes a little bit of getting used to with any stock, especially MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is like the volatility of most stocks on steroids. So, yeah, don't jump. Or if you jump, yeah, you'd have to get yourself emotionally ready for that. Bitcoin Borg bought 2 more shares today. Grats. Swoldemore says, I felt the same way during Q1 run. Tough to sell covered calls when 100 shares was 100K initial. Yeah, that was brutal. BB says, did you buy up during the doldrums this year? Yeah, I was trying to add some positions. I was trying to, sell short-term volatility and then buy long calls. That was my strategy throughout most of this year. Dude Face, my first goal is 300 shares, and I'm just shy. Humble pleb. After that, 300 Tesla. I'll add more and more after that. Yeah, I'll be rolling a bunch of profits in 2025 into Tesla if my master plan goes through. Solomore says, got pretty lucky in September. Long the cheap 300 January calls. Sometimes the lottery tickets pay well. Yeah, for sure. Bought them as a long IV position, 2 to 3x goal. I was way wrong the right way. Yeah, a couple of times I was like, holy crap, I've like 5x'd on something. But like I still thought I had room to grow, so I was like, didn't even want to take profits with a 5x. But when I realized how much delta I had in long leverage, I ended up having to do it. I took like half of my Aprils off and all of my Januaries. I think I have the call debit spreads still on for January. Most of them look like losers. We'll see. Peter Quinn, I can tell you quitting your regular job is great. Besides all this trading, find a low maintenance business to bring in new money you enjoy. Can be anything, few days a month, no set schedule. Yes. I have thought about that as well. I like this educational part of it. I feel like I'm doing something positive with my time. So there's satisfaction in that. But Sailor's rules for life, I think one of them was upgrade the world. So I have been thinking about, okay, rather than just have my money ping-ponging around in the stock market all the time, that's not necessarily upgrading the world. Hopefully this educational stuff is. But I do have two business ideas. So I've been trying to work on the carnivore or at least meat-based diet, but I can't find anywhere to eat. There's marinating my steaks in fucking seed oils and all kinds of dumb shit. So I have thought about, like, restaurants are terrible business ideas, but I kind of can't help it. Like, I just want someplace that I can eat and not eat shit food. So I thought something maybe meat-based would be good. And then even the things that have flour in them, like maybe I'd get my flour from Europe where they don't put glyphosate on the frickin' wheat and, uh, you know, use real honey instead of, or maybe organic cane sugar instead of high fructose corn sweet, syrup and all that dumb shit. Um, Whole Foods, something like that. That would kind of make me happy, even if it's, you know, it would probably be so expensive that I would probably have to fund the damn thing with my options profits. But I don't know. Maybe there's another person out there too that would pay an arm and a leg for organic, grass fed ribeye. I don't know. So that's in the back of my mind, but it's definitely good advice. Thank you for that. Swoldemort says, long shares is a great way to play. My 2021 shares are up 250% in Bitcoin terms. Every Bitcoin move was 2.5x before MicroStrategy expansion. Hell yeah. And then says they were very down for a long time. Yeah. All right, I'm going to have to try to power through these. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get to all these comments. Bitcoin Borg, thanks. Yeah, I do believe this is the next NVIDIA Tesla kind of play. Just hope I got in early enough. Yes, definitely. And I know there's threats, the bear market, all kinds of, key man risk and all that stuff. But I mean, NVIDIA, one Chinese invasion and NVIDIA's stock goes to zero. I think they do have production in the United States now, so that risk is lessened. But I can't imagine being as long in NVIDIA 6 months ago as I am in MicroStrategy right now. It's night and day. The risk that some of these other companies have. Tesla, I think, is second best as far as MicroStrategy is concerned. I think in 10 years, 10, 15 years, MicroStrategy and Tesla will be the Magnificent Two. And then everybody else will just be picking up the crumbs. We'll see. Swoldemort, if you're a Bitcoin bull, I think we see NVIDIA move as well. Dude face exactly thinking in terms of Bitcoin held. Only after that do I think in terms of post FASB and post SBR. Bitcoin purchase in terms of revenue. Yeah, I told myself I was going to take these profits and buy more Bitcoin too, but I'm like, that's just kind of even more of a self-custody headache. I'll probably double my Bitcoin stack in 2025. But I'm still on the fence about, then I got to figure out which part of the United States I want to bury my fucking cold card, and it's just kind of a pain in the ass. E says, thank you so much for doing this and sharing all your knowledge. I appreciate it so much. I'm learning so much from you. Thank you. You're absolutely welcome. I'll give you the Chick-fil-A response. My pleasure. Mega how-to man, sell covered calls. Sell this 550. Selling covered calls is free money. No, it's not. I bought 500 more shares today. If you own 100 shares of any stock, you should be selling covered calls. Okay. 7 months to a year ago, I would have agreed with all of that, but I think that the upside potential for MicroStrategy over the next 12 months is going to be staggeringly more than covered call income on MicroStrategy. Like, it's going to be insane. I mean, even if I got like 5% ROI a week and got 250% returns on my MicroStrategy, I don't think that's going to compare to MSTR's price over the next 12 months. I think that would be leaving money on the table. But I like how excited you are, though. But it's definitely not free money. It's guaranteed money. As soon as you sell that covered call, the money's in your account. You can do whatever you want with it. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. Thomas Sowell said there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So you are trading unlimited upside for money in your pocket. I think it's absolutely a winning strategy. It just might not be the optimal strategy. Let's leave it there. Bitcoin Borg +1 for the meat-based stuff. It's so hard to find reasonable food snacks that aren't completely drenched in seed oils and everything they do to food these days. Yeah, there's a couple of companies that will work with you. Like I think it was Longhorn. I called them and they're like, yeah, we put seed oils on the grill, but we'll cook it for you in tinfoil. I'm like, all right, that's pretty fucking cool. But now I just have to worry about the aluminum from the tinfoil leaching into my steak, and I don't know what's worse. But they were cool about it. Delete the account, dude. Hell yeah, animal-based diet is the best. I can't give up my fruit. I did for about a month, but oh my god, I love raspberries and frickin' pineapples so much. It's like Brokeback Mountain. I can't quit you. And this time of year, persimmons are frickin' amazing. You gotta, depending on which ones you get, you have to let them ripen well. But yeah, I haven't been able to quit fruit yet. Art Hill, dude, this will be cool. Lots of Bitcoiners on the carnivore keto path. Yeah, I think if you watch any of Saifedean's stuff, he's highlighted some was it Fiat Food? Did he do Fiat Standard? Yeah, after Bitcoin Standard, I think he did Fiat Standard, but then somebody wrote Fiat Food or something. I can't remember the guy that got interviewed on that. But and then I think he had his brother on who's a doctor, and it was like Fiat Medicine. They did an episode on that. But there's just so much about the corruption in every single industry that Bitcoin is fixing. It's going to be crazy. And it's going to be crazy good for humanity, I think. Delete the account. We need Chipotle type place that is animal based. Yeah, Chipotle is actually not terrible. I started getting their burrito bowls. I think one of their meats qualifies as whole 30. It might be the carnitas. Double check it. But yeah, I don't think you can completely get away from seed oils with them. If I could, it would be freaking awesome. Now, Buffalo Wild Wings, if you get the ones that aren't breaded, I believe they fry in tallow. So the naked ones or the ones that are just seasoned, I think, check each one, but they have a whole ass website with their ingredients. Of course, the fries will probably kill you, but I think some of their wings are at least fried in tallow. Dr. Z says, of all the bear cases you've heard, which one, even if it's dumb, do you think has the most merit? I mean, I think some people are just like, oh, it's number go up, it's going to go down. And like, well, that's not even a bear case. That's just like the 4-year cycle rearing its ugly head. Like, I'm not saying MicroStrategy is going to go up like 24/7, all day, every day, forever. Um, I think it's overall number go up if you have a long enough time frame. But let's see, the best bear cases. I don't know. Most of them are so dumb. But actually, I mentioned this one to the True North crew, and Jeff actually like laughed at me, and so I was like, okay, maybe I won't say this on the call, but this is my channel, so I can embarrass myself. So I tried to come up with actually I think I mentioned it the other day. Maybe I didn't. But I thought something like this. Like, so they got the 21-21 plan, right? So 21 billion convertible bonds they want. So they're, if you take the oil refinery analogy, right? Where are they getting their fuel from? They're getting fuel, a lot of it from the ATM, which is pumping the implied vol up, which is giving them favorable convertible bond market. So it's a synergistic thing that they got going on between the ATM and the convertible bonds. But this convertible bond market is fueling their Bitcoin purchases. But if you've been a Bitcoiner for very long, you've heard, Saylor himself even say that Bitcoin is going to eat the gold market, then it's going to eat the bond market, and it's going to eat real estate, and it's going to eat basically every other wealth preservation mechanism that rich people have been using for the last 1,000 years. Bitcoin's going to eat everyone's lunch. It doesn't mean that they go away completely. It just means that, they're going to dwarf their market caps and make them much less relevant in Bitcoin terms. Well, if Bitcoin's market cap is greater than the bond market cap, then where is MicroStrategy going to get their fuel from, right? If Bitcoin is frickin' $10 million a coin, and the bond market is a tenth the size of the Bitcoin market, then you can't really use a smaller market to juice the bigger market. You can use the bigger market to juice the smaller market. So that's a little bit of a bias towards my own good ideas, which, maybe weren't that good because I got laughed at when I mentioned it. But, that's, I try to imagine in the future, like, okay, if all of this, money, this easy money dries up, how would it dry up? And that just seemed like a weird, ironic thing that could potentially happen. MicroStrategy is driving hyper Bitcoinization, but does hyper Bitcoinization sink the bond market's battleship? And then now they have less tools to juice their Bitcoinization, Bitcoin purchases. I don't know. That may be a dumbass idea. Feel free to roast me in the comments as you see fit. I mean, I don't even think I was going to do a whole episode on this, but I'll give a little primer now. I think the key man risk is completely overblown. And as a matter of fact, I think that Saylor is actually disappearing himself. I think he's trying to recreate Satoshi's Immaculate Conception. He's got a majority voting shares now, but every time they issue shares, he's diluting his own, voting power, right? And I think that's his way of Satoshiing himself and kind of like disappearing and turning the company over to the shareholders, almost like a charitable donation to the world. So I think key man risk for him is he's taking that key man risk out of the situation by disappearing himself slowly over time in an accretive way. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's literally doing that, to honor Satoshi's memory, or, kind of in his in the spirit of Satoshi. So I don't buy into key man risk much. Yeah, I'd have to think about that. I really just not sure which bear case actually makes any sense. Delete says, what percentage of your portfolio is actually in Bitcoin? So I've said this before, but around March or so, I actually sold half my Bitcoin stack to buy MicroStrategy. I know that every Bitcoiner out there is like, oh, we're going to revoke your Bitcoin card. You know, you're not orange pilled, uh, Bitcoin only, all of that shit. Um, but I don't regret it for now. And so my, let's see, Bitcoin stack is probably worth probably 5%. It's not a lot, but it didn't start out 5%. It was actually much higher, but MicroStrategy's just outgrown Bitcoin over the last 6 months so much. Plus, I was leveraged, right? I didn't just buy straight shares of MicroStrategy. I bought a bunch of leverage, and those were all winners. So, uh, yeah, my ratio is way out of whack. I think for a long-term portfolio, I might try to get to like 40% Bitcoin, 60% equities. The old 60-40 bond portfolio, but instead of bonds, I'll just swap out bonds for Bitcoin, and then like 30% MicroStrategy, 30% Tesla. I think that might be my target for end of 2025. That'll probably be my ratio that I shoot for. Dr. Z, what's the connection between Bitcoiners and the carnivore keto diet? Yeah, it's basically all of humanity is built with an error in the source code, and that's been fiat. So as people start to unhook fiat, uh, the corruption in the research industry, in the medical industry, in politics, basically in everything, there's the corruption of money is more important than the truth. Once you become orange pilled, you start to become, you know, we'll use the Matrix reference. You start to become red pilled in everything. Um, I said it as a joke, but I actually mean it. At the end of the call last night, I said that veganism is an eating disorder, and I actually stole that joke from Mark Ripito, who wrote the book Starting Strength, which I would recommend for anyone who wants uh, to get strong. He's also got a YouTube channel, but yeah, I think that the proper human diet is meat, and you can throw some variety in there if you want. But I think plant agriculture has been a way to feed the slaves for the least amount of money possible. Uh, the kings and queens get to eat meat, milk, egg, milk and butter and eggs. Uh, and then, you basically convince the population that vegetarianism is healthy, and you insert that into religions. So, with apologies to religions that try not to eat meat, I think that's probably uh, you know, brainwashing on like a worldwide scale to convince people to uh to eat the cheap shit that can be mass produced for the plebs. Um, delete the account. No, check out Paul Saladino, Fruit and Meat, Raw Dairy. Absolutely. He famously kind of stopped doing full carnivore. The other ones I follow are Ken. Damn it. What's his name? Dr. Ken. And, God, the Australian dude. Anyway, those are my favorite carnivore docs. I'm sure somebody will put it in the comments. They probably know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm just, my mind is blanking. Bitcoin board, Dr. Z. In my opinion, the connection is the willingness to think outside the box. Yep. Dr. Z says, thanks, Soul. Appreciate the knowledge you share. You're absolutely welcome. Hey, Climb. 90 minutes behind on the live, but thanks for doing these. Yeah, you got name dropped in the middle somewhere too, so get ready for that. I think I called you a surgeon or something like that, where you sniped the covered calls when we were at like 450, 470, and implied vol was through the roof. So that was absolutely a brilliant take. I wish I had YOLO'd in, but I was sadly still kind of have PTSD from getting 100 of my shares called away pre-split, which would be 1,000 shares nowadays. Dr. Z, Bitcoin Borg, interesting. I really don't see keto as being that far outside the box. It seems pretty evident that natural foods equals good, processed foods equals bad. Yeah, it's crazy that that should be such a weird foreign idea, right? That all this processed food shit that they're trying to push down our throats is not actually good for us. Build your CNC says, hey all, hey right back. Swoldemore, good low risk MicroStrategy, long equals low MNAV, low IV, low SOPR, don't know what that is. Low perp funding, don't know what that is. Dr. Z, I've never heard the Keyman Sailor strategy. Interesting. Swoldemore, ultimate Sailor Satoshi move, sell his MicroStrategy to cover all the convertible bond debts in 2028. Disappear. Oh my God. I think I'm way behind on X. Let me just power through these real quick. I'm just going to read through them and see if there's anything I need to talk about. Mark says, do you think Sailor is tapping the ATM right now? He's tapping the ATM every fucking minute of the day. R. Hild, Jeff Park's 4060 radical port theory, Bitcoin storage, MSTR is something like this. Okay, so you outed me. That is one of the reasons why I said that number. And I should have called him out for that. So, yes, he gets credit for the 60/40, and it's been something that I've been thinking about. But even before that, and I don't know if this is history rhymes or repeats or whatever that bullshit is, but Chris Cole actually made me think about it as much as like 6 months ago. So Quant Bros mentioned this guy, and I checked him out, and he's got something he calls the Dragon portfolio. And I'll probably screw this up, but it was something like 40% gold. And this is all pre-Bitcoin. So I don't know if he's orange pilled at this point, but it was like 40% gold. I don't know, 10, 20% bonds. And then, yeah, let's just say 20% bonds. So then there's 40 left over. And then there was 3 more segments. And it was some combination of like long vol and short vol. And he claimed that over a 100-year period, he back tested this portfolio, and it survived every single, uh, trading environment. And so I thought, all right, well, if this guy is fucking brilliant, and it's probably a legit strategy. And so I thought, well, gold is a shiny yellow rock. So if I just throw out bonds and gold and replace it with Bitcoin, maybe it should be like a 60% Bitcoin, 40% equities, or 40% Bitcoin, 60% equities. And then when Jeff Park came out with his 40/60, I was like, holy shit, that's basically like what I imagined the Dragon portfolio should look like if we toss out gold and bonds and replace it with Bitcoin. So yeah, tons of smart people seem to like this 60/40 thing. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully now that I don't work, I can do more research on Jeff Park's stuff. I'll be able to do more research on Chris Cole's work and try to put together like maybe an orange dragon portfolio with bonds and gold out and Bitcoin in. So that's kind of on my to-do list. Hopefully that'll be something to look forward to. Let's see. Space DD, you're right. With agriculture, it's all subsidized with GMO corn, soy, etc. Absolutely. Ken Berry, thank you, R. Hild. That's him. Appreciate it. Dr. Ken. Very excellent channel. All right, let me scroll up on the X side, which I have been avoiding, or not avoiding, but ignoring. MicroStrategy Voyage. Yep, can't learn to box just by reading about it. Absolutely. Boxing's a lot of fun too. I haven't gotten up the nerve to spar yet. Just basically been taking the classes. But yeah, it's a ton of fun. Angry Buddha says, I remember you saying that on a stream a bit ago. I like how you're working through managing this. Gives us a lot to think about. And I think looking at max gain potential on the options is a sneaky thief. It just popped above the 4-hour linear regression. I don't do TA, so I have no idea what that is. MicroStrategy Voice says, thanks for the pump. Absolutely. I should just keep talking until we get to 150. That would be fucking awesome. Kanal says you'd be surprised at how there's a huge market for what you're talking about regarding diet. I hope so. It pisses me off. I mean, I have to cook. I cook ribeye like 3 times a day. I have steak and eggs for breakfast. I have steak for lunch. I have steak for dinner. And if I can squeeze in a 4th meal, especially on a lifting day, I do that as well. And then I still can't. I love sweet potatoes as well. I don't know if I'm poisoning myself with that. I don't eat the skins, but yeah, I can't help eating my raspberries and pineapple and whatever else is in season. Angry Buddha says, what do you think of gut biome tests? Are they helpful? I'm not sure. I think we're probably going to learn that the biome is probably very important. So when I was in the Navy, I actually worked in the microbiology department, so I do know a little bit about bacteria. What was it? There's one bacteria that I think fights cancer, and I think whatever's in strawberries and cranberries or some shit like that, like helps this. It's something mucosophilia. I don't know. Saw it in some freaking podcast back in the day. But apparently, if you can get this bacteria growing in your gut, it like helps fight cancer and stuff. So I think it's going to be incredibly important. But at the very least, going as close to whole foods as you can is probably going to help your microbiome. I haven't confirmed this, but one person actually recommended eating your fermented foods at the same time as your meat, because the acids in your stomach will actually kill the bacteria before it actually gets to your intestines. But they claimed that if you eat like your meat with your sauerkraut or your meat with your yogurt, something with live bacteria in it, that the bacteria will penetrate the meat, and then the meat actually survives the acid, and then you can actually colonize your intestines with some of the fermented foods by literally masticating the bacteria into the chunks of meat. So I've been doing that a little bit. I don't know if it's doing anything, but I've been trying it out. All right. Dr. Canal says, right now, no, and it's not because the tests aren't accurate. It's just that we don't know what to do with the results. That's a good point. On an individualized basis, all of the gut microbiome testing stuff, though, is extremely promising and will be part of the future of self-sovereign care. Love it. Thank you for the expert opinion. And then Kanal says, Nithu, we should do a space on orange pill philosophies as they pertain to diet for real. It would be super interesting. Write it down. We will make it happen. I love the idea. Eric says, chafe or chaff. Oh, Dr. Chafee. Yeah, that's the other one. So Dr. Ken and Dr. Chafee, thank you very much. Between those two and Dr. Saladino, and then there's the other guy. He doesn't put out as much informational content, but he lifts like a fucking maniac. There's one other guy who's more of an influencer than actually puts out information, but he's a good one too. Yeah, that's the Australian Dr. Chafee. Thanks, Eric and ADHD Options. Appreciate it. Sean Baker. See, you guys have all the freaking answers. Thanks, R. Hild. That's the other guy, Sean Baker. See, we are a freaking. It's almost like we're a hive mind of just good information. The networks that we're building is freaking insane, and the amount of good information that we're going to be able to spread just has me so bullish. Obviously on Bitcoin, on MicroStrategy, but just bullish on the future. And I'm just desperate, really, to try to reverse all the damage that I've done to my body over the last, probably first half of my life. And I just want to live long enough to see what kind of world we live in when Bitcoin, really drains the swamp. So, uh, looking forward to it. Thanks everybody for joining the call, and thanks everybody for uh, answering all the questions that I couldn't remember the remember the answers to. So, appreciate y'all. Be good, y'all.